Hello everyone, welcome to this podcast. I am BLAZINGKNIGHT, and joining me is my friend Zane E. Bender. Want to introduce yourself?
Hello everybody, I'm the guy who does a really racist impersonation of Mangs!
Oh no, I don't think that's a really racist impersonation. I think you've got to go a bit more along this angle or something like that.
Make sure to agree with all the opinions expressed in this video, because if you don't, you're a fucking plebeian and you don't deserve to have testicles.
We're starting this video off and you're already talking shit.
I love the smell of burnt straw, man, in the morning.
Yeah, no offense.
It smells like victory in internet arguments.
Indeed it does. We don't mean any disrespect. I didn't know you were going to start with something like this.
I mean, I don't have anything against Mangs, it's just, you know, he's kind of an easy target.
Yeah, but to be fair, anyone could be an easy target. I know what it's like to be an easy target.
Yeah, no.
Somebody say Revelations?
Yeah. In the words of a wise man, let's not sink to that level, shall we?
Yep.
Okay. But anyways, we are here to talk about Fire Emblem Echoes. The game has been out for
about
a while now.
Just under a month.
Yeah, just under a month, yeah. And we've already beaten it, so that's a good indicator of how many other friends we have.
Well, to be fair, it's not exactly the longest, biggest, and hardest Fire Emblem game.
In a sense, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's pretty standard 3DS RPG. I've logged about 40 hours into it already.
Same here.
I'm just about done with the extra post-game dungeon, so I mean it's not exactly
it's not Radiant Dawn.
Yeah, so this podcast will be spoilers free, so we're not going to be giving any major plot points away. We're just going to
discuss our general thoughts on the game.
Yeah, just discuss general thoughts on the game, what we like, what we don't like. I have a lot to say about this game.
I think everyone does. It's been buzzing around the internet quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this game has kind of had a little bit of a. I'll be honest. I was a little nervous for when this game was being announced and during the pre-release whatevers, because I liked Awakening got to me. Awakening was not my first Fire Emblem game, but it got to me early on enough that it was a game that I didn't have enough of knowledge of the series to really compare it to. The only other two games that I had to compare it to were the two Tellius games, which were the only games in the series I had played up to that point. And I liked Awakening a lot, entirely because of the casual mode and because of some of the new things it was trying. Like
the better support system?
Like the better support conversation mechanics and some of the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Pair up and stuff like that. And so I really enjoyed that game. And then Fates comes out, and I liked Fates fine enough, but I found that trying to go back and play those games after experiencing more of the series has been kind of a rough ride, because there are times where they can get a little bullshitty, and I do think that most of the criticism towards Fates and Awakening has more to do with people not being happy with the style the franchise took, rather than any major dips in quality. Although I will admit that the stories to those two games could use work at best.
Yeah, I'd say I'm the same with Fates when it comes to Birthright and Revelations. I don't feel the same with Conquest though. I've actually gone back to that after playing Echoes, and it feels just as good.
Well, but getting back to Echoes, there was some. I was a little nervous with the pre-release because I was seeing all these things where stuff like they were going to be removing Weapon Triangle. Bringing back stuff like fatigue, which I've heard is a mechanic from Thracia 776.
So you thought this is going to be a lot more alienating?
I thought that it was either going to go down the route of going way far back into the classic pre-Awakening era style of games,
mm-hmm.
So much that it would alienate new fans, or it was going to try too hard to update the original Gaiden and alienate the old fans, and I know that you touched that on that in your
if they made way too many changes, it doesn't even feel like Gaiden anymore.
But And
this game, as just being as it is, was a massive risky move because, like, before the Fire Emblem Direct, who, honest to God, knew what Gaiden was?
Well, here's the thing. I thought it was. I'm getting feedback in the thing. I thought it was a good idea for Intelligent Systems to do a remake of an old game before trying to do another original story after Fates, because I think one of the big problems with Fates' story and why it was such a train wreck was that it might have just been, it was a combination, I think, of the guy who worked on it just not really having a lot of experience with writing the particular genre, and also Fates came out like decently, like it had like 2 years for development, and maybe if that, I don't know when it was actually started developing, but it as someone who has taken his hand to try writing stories, the story of Fates does kind of smack of it was a first draft script that got stuck into a finished product. On top of being just a really big story to begin with. Well, that too, because it had 3 parts to do. So yeah, and you can. So I think it was. You can tell with Fates, there's definitely parts where you can see the quality there, but most of it's overshadowed because it's very inconsistent, sloppy. Yeah, but I think it was a smart idea for Intelligent Systems to remake an older game, and Gaiden in particular. It was kind of a safe choice because it was a very obscure game, but at the same time, the original Gaiden was a very open-ended Fire Emblem experience, and because of that, they can market it to people who are more familiar with the newer games, who are more used to those open-ended Fire Emblem experiences. Yeah, like, so, you can, like again, features like the world map and the reclassing and stuff, there's stuff Awakening pulled. Yeah, and on top of that, like, if they were to remake Binding Blade or the Jugdral games, Genealogy and Thracia, they would probably have to change a lot about those games in order to make them a little bit more appealing to some people, and I know that that's kind of a dirty thing to say about Fire Emblem, because that changing to appeal to mainstream is a large part of why Awakening and Fates' names are mud with some of the community. But at the same time, Gaiden has a lot of those stuff prepackaged in. Gaiden has a story that inherently has the moral gray of Fire Emblem, that they don't need to try too hard to really make good. The story is already sort of prepackaged there. Yeah. So it was kind of a safe idea to remake an old game. It's just that Gaiden is such an oddball game, and I haven't played the game, but I have heard. But from what I have seen, it was up till that point kind of such an oddball game that it was hard. That it would be hard to adapt it to a more modern audience, because a lot of it, from what I've heard, is a little bit on the dated side. Oh, it's very archaic and stuff. Like, it's often considered the black sheep because it has all these mechanics and features that, because of the limitations at the time and just how it's built, it's just weird experience. Like, a lot of NES sequels are like that. Zelda 2 was like that. Castlevania 2 was like that. And Gaiden, while it has its charm and qualities, the game feels incredibly dated. Nintendo games that were sequels to original games are like almost have this consistent track record of being weird and in a lot of cases not really well remembered. Although I think Zelda 2 is actually a pretty good game. Well, Metroid 2 was good. Metroid 2 is a GBA game, but GBA? Game Boy. Well, you can play it on the GBA. Yeah, technically, yeah. Getting back on track, I was a little nervous with some of the pre-release to this game, and that was not helped by some of the closer to release... Like the DLC? The squawking over the DLC. People going nuts over that shit. There was, and the things I saw where I was like, ugh, this is sounding like it's going to be really dated. There was some bright lights with the Famitsu. Famitsu actually, I think Echoes is the highest reviewed Fire Emblem game that Famitsu has covered. Damn. Which is impressive. And there was something else. Up to Echoes that had me a little worried. I don't know. Well, they didn't release loads and loads of info on Echoes because Echoes didn't actually have that much time to
build up hype as much as the other games did.
Yeah, but now I remember it was Echo's becoming, from what I can tell, becoming another casualty of IGN's quest to make themselves look like the biggest bunch of morons in the
Oh yeah, IGN score, yeah. No, I have read the reviews. Some of their criticisms are correct, but others like them complaining about no avatars and marriages. Like the game clearly advertised and told you this isn't the case. You can't really complain about that.
IGN has spent the better part of the last decade just trying as hard as they can to make it impossible for anyone to take their reviews of games seriously.
Too much stupid out of 10.
Yeah, 7.8 out of 10. Yeah, but when I got the game, I didn't exactly have the highest expectations for this game, and I have to say, when I first got the game and I was playing it, it was actually not just meeting my expectations, but exceeding them a little. I was actually really enjoying this game up to a point. And if you just want quick opinions of the game, for me, I think the game is good. I think the game is very good. I think that if you were disappointed by Awakening or Fates or both, this is at the very least
a step in the right direction.
A step in the right direction for the franchise. It is getting the franchise more back to its roots. It is toning down some of the more anime moments of the previous games. Although they're not entirely dead, but they're less noticeable and less distracting.
Mm-hmm.
It is getting the story and characters a little bit more back on track. At least the main cast. I think that Awakening and Fates have good supporting cast. It's just that their main cast
was weak.
We're either not as strong as the older games, or we're not presented well in the main story. Because Xander is a great character
in terms of supports and stuff. Yeah.
In terms of supports, but in the main game, he's...
Yeah, well, I think that's the case for most of them, because again, in Fate, some characters do take center stage, whereas like Hinoka and Sakura do next to nothing, but Takumi gets really well developed in Conquest. It's not very balanced when it comes to putting all the characters at the forefront.
But Echoes was... I think Echoes is a very good game. I will say, though, that there is one caveat I have to put, in that it can be a frustrating and somewhat downright boring experience at times. Like
yeah.
The big I guess we should probably start talking about the individual elements. So for gameplay, I'm of the opinion that the first third of this game, from the prologue
to Act 2,
up until roughly, I want to say like prologue up until roughly about.
Because if I'm thinking what I think you're going to say, then I'm probably going to be 100% agreeing with you.
I think from prologue up until the end of Act 2 is really good.
Mm-hmm.
The Chapter 3 and the parts through it are good, but there are some cracks starting to show. And then Part 4 onwards is... I don't want to say where the game falls apart, because that would be disingenuous, because I don't think that Part 4, is a massive drop-off in quality, but it's where the really frustrating maps start showing up, and some of the... And I'm going to say right now, when this game's maps are good, they're good, if not outstanding. When this game's maps are bad, they're not just frustrating, they're really tedious and take forever.
Okay, I pretty much agree with you on the whole. From the beginning to the end of Act 2, Echoes is really great, loads of fun, really love it. Act 3 is where things start to get a bit boring and tedious for me. And as for the map design, here's the thing. Echoes maps, to me, at best, they're okay, at worst, they're shit.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
Like, there are some that are quite cool and kind of nice, but, like, the level design in Echoes is pretty bad. Mostly because it's not the case of, like, with games like Binding Blade, that was just filled to the brim with bullshit and really annoying, like, bolting and Fog of War. Revelations was incredibly gimmicky. Echoes is just downright dull in terms of map design.
Echoes' map design is very much trying to be function. It's trying to...
every map is essentially just a box.
And basically every map in the game is just about fulfilling the functions of map design, and...
Yeah, ticking the boxes.
And honestly, that's not really a big deal for me. But this game is guilty of something that I can't think of very many other Fire Emblem games that do. The most I can think of is some of the later maps in Conquest, where traditionally my least favorite maps in Fire Emblem are the ones that either try to force you to rush through a chapter while putting too many enemies in your way for that to be realistically possible. Stuff like Ephraim's Chapter 13, Sacred Stones.
Yeah, I see.
As one other one. Or it's just a case of they put too many enemies for you to realistically deal with.
Like Ryoma's chapter in Conquest.
Actually, Ryoma's chapter in Conquest is a good example of...
bad enemy placement.
It's a good example of something that this game does, and this game is really guilty of it, is what I like to call trench warfare maps.
Oh, God.
Where the enemy is beyond a point that you can't realistically go into because it's over a wall or desert terrain and there's an archer or two or a whole bunch like that one stupid map in the desert, where there's a bunch of archers or just a bunch of enemies with really strong attacks that you can't realistically send a unit over there without them getting dogpiled and killed. You can't really lure out the enemy the enemies that are causing the trouble without
taking significant damage.
Ganging up on you or having your units take a whole bunch of damage.
Yeah.
Or you can't get enough units across to kill enough enemies with the units that you can get across to give yourself some breathing room so that you won't have your units die. So it's a case of you're stuck trying as hard as you can to figure out ways to get the enemy out of...
Yeah, the game just pretty much wants you to gun it through that part and pray to God you don't die.
I know, and it's especially bad because, there were a lot of maps towards the end of Celica's Part 3, once you started tackling Grief, where, I alluded to this. It was the one map with the Desert Fortress, and literally every enemy in that chapter is an archer, but there's this, you have to slowly slog across the desert for like 10 turns or so in order to get your units up to a place, and you have two of the White Wing Sisters, but you can't use them because the
archers.
The map is full of archers, and they'll die immediately.
Most of Echo's maps I find, because again it has a real fetish for using archers or long range magic users. Half the time it's like, okay, send in my bow knight, just bait them out. Literally, that's all you did. Here, go. Stand in this fortress, bait them out, hope for the best.
If anyone has not gotten the game and is planning to do so, my one tip I can recommend: once you get Atlas, promote him into an archer, because it will save you so much grief in the later parts of the game. Because Atlas as an archer, especially if he has a good forged bow, he is actually really, really good.
He's meant to be one of the weaker villagers though, because aside from strength, all his stats are kind of crappy.
Honestly, I've been using him. Actually, recently, I purchased some of the DLC, and I managed to forge myself a killer bow and upgrade it fully. The killer bow is broken in this game. Because
certain weapons are, and because you can get certain skills with them. That's one thing I do really love about Echoes. Because every character has just a standard sword and lance and whatever, but you can equip iron, steel, or blessed ones, and the more you use them, you unlock certain skills and arts, and I love that. I think it's a really cool feature.
Yeah, I think it's a really great feature too. I think the equipment system in general is a little underutilized because you only have one
slot for everything.
For everything, which is,
I think it's a bit silly.
The game is built around it, and I don't think it's that much of a hindrance. But I do kind of wish that they would bring the thing about Echoes is even though we have been shit talking some parts of it, there are a lot of really cool ideas. This
is the thing about Echoes. All the new features and exclusive ideas, best part of the game. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing. The dungeon crawling, I think, is a lot of fun, even if some of the later dungeons do tend to drag just a little bit.
Yeah, the way magic works, I think it's really cool. I love weapon forging. I love what else? I love the class system. Miller's Turnwheel, best thing ever. Needs to be in every Fire Emblem game.
Yes, Miller's Turnwheel. Okay, any of you who've been following me on Twitter, the 30 or so of you who do, you know that when I was first playing the game, I was a little iffy on Milla's turn wheel because it was its interface was confusing. Once I figured out how it was used, it was a friggin' godsend. Like
it pretty much gets rid of the biggest problem people with Fire Emblem have. If you ever lose a unit, you make a wrong move, or you get screwed over RNG, Miller's turn wheel can fix that.
Yeah, and it is balanced
because it's limited, and if your lord dies, you lose.
Yeah, if your lord dies, there's no getting around it, and that can be annoying sometimes because you have the end game post game dungeon, which is so goddamn long, and then I actually had Alm die on my first attempt. I got halfway through, and
they had to stop. My lord didn't die. The only one to die was Python, but it's like right at the end, it's like, you know what? Screw it, I'm not in the mood. I'm not gonna restart, and I ran out of thingy-majigs.
Yeah.
That last dungeon, man, that's hard.
The last main story dungeon is hard, and the
final boss. Whew, that's
that final boss is friggin' like I mean okay, the actual fight against him is actually somewhat exploitable. Another thing I learned while playing this game, the invoke spell is your best friend because any decoys that get summoned, the enemy will always target them first.
Yeah, Invoke was so cool. There were some spells, like, I remember for what, Delthea's Chapter Warp was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So good.
I mean, it's so disappointing that you can't use the Warp spell in this game, when you could through DLC in the last one, I mean, Warp made Ophelia just so much fun to use, because of how awesome it was, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, Echoes... The thing about Echoes is that I really like a lot of these new edition gameplay.
I love the new mechanics. I think they're wonderful.
And some of them are a little stupid. But this actually ties into another criticism. One of the things that makes the level design so frustrating, or at least helps contribute to it, is that the enemy design in this game is friggin' obnoxious.
This is both a good and bad thing about Echoes. It has the amount of classes you get are much more limited, which does make Echoes feel more distinctive, and there's more of a focus on strategy because there's no weapon triangle, and you can't just abuse like certain a ridiculous there's no wyverns or anything, so you can't just abuse that. But it makes enemy encounters really dull because the game is really, really obnoxious with just here's a map, here's cavaliers, here's a map, here's druids, here's a map, here's archers. Anything else? No.
Yeah, no. I remember that was being a thing. I mean, there are some chapters in the game that do deviate from that. There will be some chapters like the map where you recruit Zeke, where it's just
cavaliers
and cavalry type enemies.
Yep. Or Sonia and Dean's chapter, which is literally just myrmidons and witches.
Yeah. And then, or you'll have something like Greeth's chapter, which actually has decent enemy variety, but the enemy placement is kind of dickish.
Yeah. Guidance enemy placement can be really dickish.
Yeah, this game's enemy placement is, and the worst offender of this is Nui Baba's map.
Oh, that is bullshit.
That is my least favorite map in the game. Not because, it wasn't necessarily, it could be hard and frustrating at times, and I had characters come close to dying, or did die at a couple occasions. But the enemies in that particular map are spaced in just the right location where you cannot get close, because you have Nui Baba with her basically one-hit kill spell. It drains you down to 1 HP.
Yeah, which is why if you do that map, Dreadfire, because you will be at half HP. Pray to God you have a Dreadfire.
And the stupid thing was, I didn't realize that on my first playthrough. I didn't realize
until partway through. I was like, oh wait, Dreadfire is cut magic damage in half. Thank God. Saber, go!
I didn't think that was a thing, but that they would just get knocked down to 1 HP too. But then I found it out later while fighting another enemy that had them use a spell, and I was like, aw, damn it.
Yeah, but the point is, the death spell's ridiculous, because if Nui Baba can hit you with it, then the archer can hit you because he's got more range and you're gonna die.
Or the goddamn gargoyles that...
Yeah, that's another thing. This game has a boner for spawning enemies, and it's annoying.
Friggin' canters suck ass so goddamn hard.
Yeah.
Because they never, ever stop with the respawning enemies.
And sometimes they can spawn up to 6 at a time.
they can spawn up to like 6 or more.
And by the way,
actually.
gargoyles, like, they will otherwise always double you. They may not be the strongest, but they'll pretty much always double you.
Gargoyles are so obnoxious because it's not just that they double you, but they have just enough defense that you should not be able to one-shot.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of movement as well, and they fly.
Yeah. So the enemies in this game like are all around like it'd be one thing if just the enemies had high stats and that was it, but a lot of them have
really high
other
HP
perks as well. Like, you know, and enemy archers in this game are so goddamn annoying to deal with because of just how much terrain they can cover and how far away they can.
And the fact that they have loads in Echoes, it's not like you without doing reclassing, you only get 2.
Yeah,
and one per lord.
I know it's. I mean, and the thing is that I always made sure to have 2 archers on each path. You know, I put Tobin as an archer, and I put Atlas as an archer for Celica's room.
I made them both cavaliers.
What?
I made them both cavaliers.
Okay.
Again, I didn't know going into this game what to and not to expect, so I just made them different things. Like, I made Faye a Pegasus Knight, and she performed well, but everyone says Cleric is the better option.
Yeah, Cleric is way better option.
Yeah, but again, I was able to do it just fine, just I didn't go with the optimal stuff. But I did make Cliff a mage, and he was amazing.
Yes, Cliff is actually pretty good. Actually, that makes a nice segue for in terms of characters, or not even characters. What units, just in terms of battle performance alone, would you say were personal favorites for you?
Just battle performance?
Yeah, just in terms of battle performance.
Okay.
Because I have the feeling that you're going to do a list on characters and go into like actual character.
Well, like everything I do, I look at both, but character does kind of lean towards like which ones will be like at the top. In terms of battle, Delthea, Saber, May, Matilda, Leon, Kamui. Who else is really good?
I mean, it's funny that you bring up Kamui because
the Pegasus sisters, all 3 of them.
Kamui's actually Corrin's Japanese.
Yeah, I know, because Tobin's Robin.
Yeah. So, but you were saying?
Yeah, the 3 Pegasus sisters, they're very potent. The Knights, I don't think are amazing, but they're definitely like pretty damn good. But towards the end, they kind of fall apart. Aside from that, I think those ones are definitely the most potent, you know, gameplay wise, and also Sonya's pretty good. Jenny's actually pretty good. Jenny.
Oh, Jenny.
Once she starts learning offensive spells, then she starts getting pretty good.
Yeah. Matilda's my favorite.
Oh, I love Matilda.
Yeah, and both of the lords in this game are really good too.
Yeah, Alm and Celica are both really good.
I lean a little bit more towards Alm because of his physical capabilities, and honestly, Alm's weapons are actually really good. Like
the Royal Sword.
The Royal Sword has really powerful skills.
Double Lion.
The falchion, once you get it, is friggin' amazing in this game.
Oh yeah,
it's super powerful and it's got great stats all around.
Well, it's a falchion.
I mean, yeah, it's a falchion, and in terms of and what's to say about the characters? You know, because this is a particularly interesting thing.
Honestly, Echo's cast is one of my favorites, easily in my top 5. Not because they're the most deep or the most entertaining; they're just some of the most likable. Like, I just really like these characters.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Because
the voice acting helps.
Yeah, the voice acting helps. The voice acting in this game is fantastic.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
But one thing I'm interested in talking about is what do you think of the new additions to the story? Like,
if I remember correctly, it's Vanand, Bakut, Faye, and what was it, Reyna?
Reyna and the Masked Knight, whose name we shall not give.
Okay, well, aside from Faye, who I'm just going to say this now, not counting NPCs, I hate her the most out of all the 3DS Fire Emblem characters.
I know, and it's funny to hear you say that, because, like, Zerk, our buddy Zerk was saying the same thing on Twitter, and I was kind of surprised, like, really? Like, out of all these characters, like, including characters like Sevra, who I'd argue is more unlikable, and Laurent, who I'd argue has less personality.
Mm-hmm.
You pick Faye, like I don't necessarily think she's great or even all that good,
mm-hmm.
but I can't really say worst character ever.
Well, for me, it's just it's a case of not only do I find her unlikable, but the main thing is I find her incredibly bland, and even like her supports really didn't help in just how. Yeah, just, like, some of the stuff she said, I was like, oh my god, like, you'd make Camilla and Faja think you have no life.
I mean, Faye has a similar problem to
Faja.
Camilla, to Camilla. Well, as a character, Faye has a similar problem that a lot of people had with Camilla, where so much of her identity revolves
around the main character,
around Alm and her connection to Alm, and I don't like that. But I will say that her two A supports, I think, break her away from that just enough that I can't realistically say that I dislike her. The only time I thought she was like flat out unlikable was in one of her base conversations after a certain moment where she tries to take advantage of a thing that happened with Alm.
Mm-hmm.
That was pushing it. But even then, that's a thing that I could realistically see her doing, and I don't know. I can't really say that she's like a personal least favorite of mine. I wouldn't necessarily say she's good, but I can't really say that she's the worst.
Okay, that's fair enough. For me, it's just it's a combination of things. Like, one, again, I don't like how focused she is. Two, she barely changes at all. Even though her A supports are all right, she like goes through next to no change. And as outside of Arm, there's nothing to her. Because, say what you want about Camilla and Tharja, but they had stuff outside of Robin and Corin. Faja at least helped people with their problems sometimes and grew. Camilla had a really interesting backstory. And even her thing about killing people, it doesn't even blend well with the type of character she is. It's like, she goes like, oh, I drank all this tea, I'm going to kill, great for killing people. It's like, that doesn't even fit. Like, at least with Faja, because of how cold she is, it gelled with her. You may not like it, and I can get that, but at least it gelled with her. And I guess the thing that pushed me over the edge was when Silk was like, do you want to talk about Arm? It's like, no, I'd rather talk to Arm about Arm. I was like, oh, that's just fucking bullshit.
Yeah, that was kind of dumb.
Yeah, so Faye, for me, it's a combination of things. I mean, if people like her, that's fine. I've got nothing against that. I just can't stand Faye. But she's the only one in the game. Everyone else I really like.
And in terms of the other new characters, actually, let's talk about the villains of this story, because like not like super in depth, but I just want to point out, the villains in this game I think are by and large all pretty good. Like excluding some like the bandit characters are your standard Fire Emblem bandit type people. They're not given a whole lot of depth, but Desai and Slade I think are really good.
They're really good because you love to hate them. Yeah,
they're really good at...
You don't just... it's not like Garen or Hans and Yoga where you just hate them because they're crap. It's like, no, they're horrible people, but you love it because of that.
Yeah. And I think Desai had an interesting angle, too, where he actually had the sort of the pretense of thinking he was smarter than the current king, and that's why he was motivated to do the things he did. I think that's... Mm-hmm. I like characters like that.
Yeah.
I think Fernand is really good.
Fernand and Bakut are really good. Bakut's one of my top 5.
Berkut's really good. I don't love him quite as much as some of the other people do, but
that's fair enough.
I think he is well written.
Yeah. I really like the angle they went with Bakut because, like, his main thing is about how, he feels, because of how his status and his upbringing, he's meant to lead the people, because that's how he's been brought up all his life, and it does make sense. But when, Alm, a commoner, like, is able to do better, and the reality crashes down on him, he can't cope. And that relates to a lot of issues in real life when you've had this mindset all your life, but then reality kicks in and suddenly that's gone, your world is shattered and people don't know how to cope. Bakut is pretty much that, and I really like it.
And I think he is a good foil to Alm with both with I had this idea when he was being introduced in some of the preliminary stuffs that he was going to be that they were going to put him as like a foil to Alm, like a counterpoint sort of to Alm and his ideals. I have to say, Alm I think is actually a really good character in this game. I think they updated him in really good ways.
Mm-hmm. I think he's overall strong. Not the best, but overall strong.
Not the best, but I really liked some of the speeches he made about why he's doing what he's doing and what he wants to accomplish.
Echo's story is much more personal, I find, than most Fire Emblem stories. It's got a more personal feel. It's less epic, I will admit. It's got less of a scope and scale, and even then I think the story from Act 3 onwards kind of goes from 0 to 100 and feels a bit rushed, but it definitely has a more personal feel to it.
Yeah. Berkut is good. I really like Fernand, and I like his character arc.
Because again, he was really good friends with Clive and stuff, but then again, because of his upbringing, he's like, I don't know how to process this.
Yeah, and the thing is that the one thing I really like about Berkut is that a lot of the traditional Fire Emblem villains, at least in terms of main villains, are, they don't really have a lot of personality shift. Like, they just kind of stay
the way they are.
They just kind of stay to their assigned traits, with maybe the exception of Lion.
Yeah,
even then, that's kind of
that's literally another being taking over.
Yeah, but Berkut, I liked the way as the story went on, he sort of
started to lose it.
He started to lose it. He started to have a sort of mental breakdown.
He started to become three-dimensional.
I was a little disappointed by the game's presentation of Rudolph, actually, because I think that. And Rudolph was good for what we saw of him. It's just that I feel like he could have been more. Like, he could have been.
He wasn't very intimidating.
It wasn't so much that I wanted him to be more intimidating. I just wanted to see more of him, because when you actually learn the truth behind him,
it is quite impactful and stuff. But at the same time, it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's like, okay.
It's not only impactful, but it's really interesting, because you see that. Deep down, he was not even remotely like a bad guy. It's just that he was starting.
It was circumstances.
He was starting a war, just to fulfill a divine plan. He was kind of a means to the end.
Yeah.
And his means were maybe
questionable.
But the end he wanted to achieve was kind of
the end. The methods. The end justifies the means.
And there could have been a whole thing about that.
Well, that's what the memory prisms are for. Another feature I'm very glad they added.
Oh yeah, the memory prisms are good too.
Yeah, I like it because you don't need to see them, but they're there and they really do add to like the overall story and characters. And I was thinking to myself, not only could every Fire Emblem game benefit from this, but if you give this to Fates, Jesus Christ, that would have made things better.
Oh yeah, no. Actually, to be honest, I think my favorite villain of the whole cast is Jeddah. And that's weird to me, because...
Is it because, again, it might be that whole, just he's so evil and you love it.
Part of it is that, but the first time he showed up in Celica's route and he was interacting with Celica, and the stuff they were talking about, I kind of had my eyebrow raised. I was like, they're taking him in an interesting angle. And, again, characters like this, the sort of Narif archetype of characters like Naref,
you mean
Reeve from Sacred Stones. I'm trying to think of others. Manfroy from Genealogy. Characters like that.
Yeah, those type of
Those type of characters are very rarely made all that interesting. It's typically just they want to revive their god to either destroy the world, or so they can gain complete power, or some sort of revenge that's kind of only vaguely hinted at in Reeve's case. Like, outside of Sephiran, their motivations are not especially, like, all that fleshed out.
Yeah, well, interesting,
But Jeddah, when you actually get to the end game, you realize that what he's doing is very much kind of an antithesis to what Alm and Celica believe is the correct path. Like, he wants to go sort of back to the old established order, because he feels... Because he's almost scared that Valentia can't survive otherwise.
Yeah, because he's not exactly in the wrong.
Yeah, but Alm and Celica believe, and are proven to be right, that a change has to occur in order for people to move forward.
He wants things to stay the way they are, which again isn't exactly wrong, and it kind of relates to how things are in the real world.
And the fact that they made him a manipulator on top of having a motivation that was not as black and white as you would first think, that kind of endeared him to me, and I again, his voice acting is fantastic, so
The entire cast is fantastic.
Yeah, the voice acting in general is just really fantastic. There's maybe one or two voices that
The only one I didn't like is when they tried to do like young Alm and young Celica. That was the only time I cringed.
I mean, they forewent the traditional anime thing of just having grown women play all the roles. Have them be the squeaky voiced kids or the little boys with the premature smoking addiction.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it for story characters. So I guess in general,
hold on.
the biggest problem I really have with the game is that its level design is it just kind of functions at best.
Yeah.
And at worst it can be a tiresome slog, and it makes the last third of the game kind of drag in places, and be just a little bit on
that ultimately, while the level design is a big problem, I also and because of it, it kind of like Echoes is one of the most boring Fire Emblem games I've played, which is sad but true. And another thing I've noticed about Echoes is, while the new stuff is great, but when it's trying to be as Gaiden as possible, it falls flat on its face. And I think them trying too hard to recapture the Gaiden feel doesn't work, because you can eat some of the more dated stuff feels even worse in this day and age.
Yeah, stuff like the pretty linear progression of the world map.
Yeah.
The world map is basically just one straight line with occasional branching paths.
And even then,
in most cases,
even then, the game will be like, all right, you've got 2 branching paths, but the game kind of forces you to go via one.
Yeah, no, it like stuff like when you reach the part where you've given the option to go save one of the characters from Nui Baba. You could decide not to do that, but A, saving that character makes the other path a heck of a lot easier, and B, that character has the Fortify spell and is the only character to learn Fortify in the game.
Yeah, and then there's the other example where if you don't go to Dean's Fortress, the Pegasus Sisters just leave you. It's like, nope, bye.
It's kind of it is a very railroaded game in some cases. So,
also, one addition which is a nice idea but didn't really work out was the supports.
Yeah, I was disappointed with the support conversations in this game. And I get that the fact that this game is fully voice acted means that they did kind of need to.
Okay.
They did kind of need to slim down on them.
Okay.
But at the same time,
they slip. Yeah, but I've got to counter argue this. Okay. First of all, there are way more games out there that have way more voice acting, like Mass Effect and stuff, and no one ever says, oh, they overwork their voice actors, so Fire Emblem does not get a free pass. Secondly, while, yes, I don't want, everyone said, Fates went overboard with the amount of supports, there was a bit too much, that's fine. This cast is smaller, and even though you didn't have to have so many supports, but they gave the characters barely any, and most of the supports are small talk, and they're pointless.
Yeah, that's the real disappointment.
And secondly, this game is not built from the ground up. These characters have been established, most of them, and you know what they're like. You didn't have to write these characters and their personalities and then work the supports around them. You have that. You could have easily worked the supports around this.
Yeah, no. It is ultimately like a disappointing thing. But I will say that the support conversation mechanics, that was another thing that I was kind of holding my
yeah, because I kept hearing it's going to be like GBA style, then it's going to be like Radiant Dawn style. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I was like, no, I don't want GBA.
It's a weird mix of the three, actually. It's a weird mix of GBA Awakening and Radiant Dawn. Cause
and honestly, I really like the way they tackled it. I like that, even that the game is proving that even without support conversation mechanics,
it can still work. I mean,
the things can work.
I mean, it's not perfect. I still think the Awakening of Fate system is the ideal way, but this one did its job well. But at the same time, it is a bit iffy because, like GBA, you can only support in battle, though you can still take actions afterwards, which I'm happy with. Like Awakening, there is visual indicators to tell you who can support, and it's quicker. But like Radiant Dawn, most of the supports are pointless.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there were a handful of.
There were some good ones. May and Bowie had a really good one.
May and Bowie had a good one. I'm trying to think.
Matilda and Clive.
I like Gray and Claire's support.
Yeah, I love Claire.
Yeah, Claire's great. Claire might be my favorite character because she comes from my favorite Fire Emblem archetype.
The Maribel archetype?
the Maribel, Clarine, La Rochelle archetype.
Yeah, but she's so much more likable than those lot, and I like them, but she's just lovely.
I know she's very.
She gets over the whole snobbish thing in after 5 minutes.
Yeah, any snobbishness is entirely unintentional on her part,
Mm-hmm.
and that I think is what makes her so endearing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that she has this one line when she kills enemies on occasion where she's like, "I know, I'm simply terrible," and that cracked me up the first time I heard it. Because it was just such.
The characters of Lowe's are just charm to them. It's like me. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty strong. I know I'm awesome. Can't we? Hey man, I'm just in this for the money.
Support conversation. So. I can't think of a whole lot else to talk about.
Well, I'm obviously going to go a bit more in depth when I make the video, but I'm going to say this for Echoes. When Echoes tries to be its own thing, it's at its best. When Echoes tries to be more like Fire Emblem, it's at its worst.
I think that is probably a good way of putting it, because the things that set this game apart, I have to say, the lack of weapon triangle in this game didn't bother me.
Yeah, it didn't bother me.
I thought it would.
Why? Because cover makes such a big difference.
I know.
Go into cover and you pretty much won, unless it's a magic attack.
Yeah, unless it's a magic attack. I mean, there are ways around it, like the combat arts. I like the equipment. I like the combat skills and stuff.
I love Miller's turn wheel. I love the memory prisms. I love just the dungeon exploring. It's all great and stuff. But when you start getting into just the maps and when you do battling in the dungeon, it's repetitive. It's dull. It's tedious, and sometimes it's unfair.
Yeah, I think that is ultimately a good way of putting it, because the dungeon crawling can be fun, in the first things, because
but when you start getting halfway through it, you really start to notice, man, they're literally repeating the same enemy placement and enemy types over and over again.
Yeah, so I guess ultimately, I would give Echoes a solid B+ at worst, maybe an A-, depending on some of the other factors. It's stopped from getting a full A from me for just because of how much it can drag at some points. Mm-hmm. But I think overall it's a solid game.
Oh yeah, it's a Fire Emblem game. They're all really good. This one is a very solid entry. It's done some really good stuff in the franchise and was a bold move, and a lot of the new stuff I hope comes back.
I think that at least some of these new mechanics should come back.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the first game we've gotten to have third-tier class units, even though they're not quite the same in this game.
Yeah, but they make a difference. Dread Fighters make a huge difference.
And there's also a fourth-tier class if you bought certain DLC.
Yeah.
Which I kind of want to access, even though it's kind of pointless. But
but if you're having a hard time.
If you're having a hard time, or you just want to get the most out of the game, which...
Yeah, which is another thing I've got to comment. Echoes lacks in replay value. There's not even a lunatic mode.
I kind of agree and disagree. I will say that the normal adventures for this game will probably last a little bit longer than some of the standard games might.
Yeah.
Fire Emblem games typically last
30 hours.
20 maybe 20 hours, maybe 30.
For me, it's usually 30.
30 if you want to get everybody, and really build up your army. This game will probably last about 30 for a main adventure, and maybe with another 5 hours or so tacked on if you want to tackle the post game content.
Yeah.
And some of the DLC. And this game does accommodate my love of grinding in Fire Emblem games, which is one of the reasons I liked Awakening and Fates so much.
Yeah, the grinding is cool, and it's all optional stuff, and it is kind of fun. Though admittedly, sometimes I find it annoying when I'm trying to travel the world map, enemy spawns I don't want to fight you, go away.
Yeah, that sucks. and enemies that roam the world map are also a pain in the ass too, because they can ambush you, and there's a chance that you will have characters die
as soon as you start.
You can do anything, and Miller's turn wheel can't help you there, and you have to restart. And that happened to me once, and that's why I'm making a big deal out of it, in case you couldn't tell.
Yeah. What else I was going to say? But it's also because of how kind of boring Echoes can get, I felt no real need to want to play it again. At least, not straight away, which I haven't really felt for anything else aside from Radiant Dawn, but that's only because Radiant Dawn, by the end, you're just drained. Because it's massive.
Radiant Dawn is a long game.
Yeah, exactly. You're so drained by the end. Whereas Echoes is a case of, I beat the game, it's like, I really don't want to play it again. It wasn't that... I mean, it was fun, yeah, but not, like, that much fun. And I'm not trying to act like every Fire Emblem game is, like, loads of fun beginning to end, but this one in particular, by the end, you really start to notice how tedious it can get.
I find that most Fire Emblem games, they get more fun as they go on, and your army gets built up and is more equipped to deal with
True
challenges.
Though I think Sacred Stones is the one exception where the game starts really damn good, but by the end it's just so easy and kind of gets boring.
I mean, this game does kind of parallel Sacred Stones.
Oh yeah, there's huge parallels.
The first third is really good. The second third is where you can start noticing more cracks in the thing.
And then the last of it is where you fall through it.
The last part is where things really start to get unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Except with this game, it's the game getting hard for the wrong reasons instead of Sacred Stones where everything gets so boringly easy.
Yeah, this game just starts getting bullshit.
Yeah. So I think it's a solid 8.5 out of 10 game. Honestly, I think it's solid enough. There is enough fun to be had.
Oh yeah, if you're a more classic fan, you'll definitely get something out of this. If you were looking for a unique Fire Emblem game, you'll definitely get something out of this. And it's still a Fire Emblem game. I reckon everyone should at the very least, give it a go.
Yeah. In terms of if you're a longtime fan of the series, get it. If you were disappointed with Awakening and Fates, I would say get it with the caveat that your criticisms of level design in those games might be even worse here.
Yeah, if it's a case of you were criticizing the story, then you'll definitely get more out of this game. If you're a fan of the newer games and
disappointed with the story of the games, but thought the gameplay of the past two was fine, definitely get it.
Yeah, but if you were a fan of the newer games because of the new mechanics and the new type of level design, you might want to give this game a skip.
I would say if you were a fan of the new games and are interested in checking out more of the stuff, I would probably suggest going to 7 and Sacred Stones.
Yeah, the GBA games.
Before, because those games, I mean, you probably will. Those games are easy enough to find if you have a Wii U already, like I do.
Just use an emulator.
You could use an emulator too.
Visual Boy Advance is the easiest emulator to use in the world.
I know, but it's still an emulator, and it's still illegal, and I don't like condoning it.
Okay, fair enough. But how else am I going to play Binding Blade? Unless Nintendo remake the game, which they might. They tweeted about it.
I'd be down for a Binding Blade remake as long as they tweak the things about that game that need tweaking.
I hope with the remakes they do and don't take the Epico's approach. Do update the voice acting, update the music, update the graphics, add new features, yes, but don't be so tight to those games where you don't iron out the flaws. Because I don't think anyone wants to play Binding Blade where Roy still doesn't promote until Chapter 21.
Yeah, fuck no. Fuck that noise. So yeah, if you're new to the series and are looking for a jumping in point, I would be a little wary of recommending this one as your first one because it can get just a tad bit boring. I will say though that in regards to the boring criticism, this game is a little bit more varied with some of its gameplay styles, which I think does help save it from being too monotonous.
Also, none of the chapters are like huge and go on forever. It's kind of more bite-sized, but when they drag, you do feel them drag.
Yeah, I know. And we touched on that. So yeah, overall good game. I just don't think it's quite the leap forward that some people might be wanting in the series.
I didn't think it was going to be. I think it's just like a nice update of an old classic, giving it a new life.
And to this game's credit, like I haven't played Shadow Dragon or New Mystery of the Emblem, but from what I can tell, this game seems to be making, it makes more strides to improve the things that didn't work.
Well, definitely into the case of Shadow Dragon. I don't know about New Mystery. I think that might, it's less about the improvements. I think New Mystery just might be an overall much more stronger game, because I hear nothing but good things about New Mystery.
I've heard many new things about it. I've heard many good things about it. I have no knowledge of the game, because I have no...
I'm going to get round to it as soon as I beat... I'm going to get round to it as soon as I beat 4.
Yeah, well, eventually, but, I mean... So yeah, that's Echoes. I would definitely recommend it if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth your time. I just be careful with just be aware going into it that there will be some bullshit parts and try to at least get try to at least do some research before going into this game of tips and tricks that other people have talked about, so that you have a little bit more idea of things to do beforehand. Like, make Faye a cleric, because she is a really good cleric.
Yeah, and, make Tobin possibly an archer. If you want to go for Sonya or Dean, go for Sonya, because she's overall better choice.
Make at least one character on your route an archer to compensate for having two archers. You can experiment with some of the classes. There are possibilities. There obviously some are better suited to a certain role than others. But I guess that's really every point that we wanted to touch on. So
yeah, I mean, I'm going to go a bit more in depth when I make that video, but that's for another time.
Yeah. So until next time, I'm Bahamut,
and I have been Blazing Knight. Thank you very much for joining us. See you later.
And I would tell you to go subscribe to my YouTube channel, but I don't actually do anything, so...
Follow him on Twitter.
Follow me on Twitter, or something like that.
Okay.
All right.